This is your first lesson of week 9, and we are going to continue working on narrative writing. You are going to continue to need to use your interactive notebook to make notes, and please remember to use the similar structure that we have in the past. You do not need to start a new page. We are going to continue writing notes as we were last week. Task 1 today is similar to the task we worked on last week. You're going to need your interactive notebook, and you're going to continue working on it as we always would. So rather than set up for a new lesson today, just continue writing the notes in the notes/activity section. So as we can remember last week, we were looking at the 7 elements of narrative writing. And so far we have done theme, setting, character, point of view. Today we're going to focus on characterization and dialogue. And hopefully we will have time to look at plot also. Let's see if you can remember your mnemonic device and if you can remember the 7 elements of narrative writing. So my one was the small chicken painted cars during parties. Can you remember what you decided to use? What did the T stand for? SCPCDP. Mine was the theme, small, setting, chicken, characters, point of view, painted, cars, characterization, during, dialect, parties, plot. Okay? So see if you can remember what yours was and what the actual elements of narrative writing are. So today we're focusing on characterization. Characterization is the description of personalities, the characters in the story, and the way in which the author reveals their personality. So basically, how the author develops a character's personality throughout the novel. So if you think about perhaps Lenny in Of Mice and Men, the author used different adjectives, similes, and descriptions so that we could understand what Lenny was like. He described him as childlike, which made us understand that he was quite innocent. So that is how characterization works. Dialogue then is basic conversation between characters, but it's characters talking using quotation marks. So the dialogue is direct speech using quotation marks. For example here, may we ask where you've been, Miss Everdeen? Effie asks. So where haven't you been? Says Hamish in a bored voice. Quotation marks are the 2 little lines on the outside of the words, as you can see here. And here. So that is direct conversation between characters, and that's known as dialogue. Very simple. The last thing we're going to be focusing on today is plot. Plot is a series of related events that make up the story. And I'm sure you can all remember Freytag's pyramid. In it you have your exposition, rising action, climax. Have a guess what the next one is? Well done. Recalling action. And the last part is your well done, resolution. In class we use a triangle or a pyramid to illustrate this. This is Freytag's pyramid. You have exposition, rising action, the climax, falling action, and your resolution. The entire plot is always built around conflict. Well done. So what is the plot, and what can you write in your notes on the copybook? You got your exposition, okay? So you break it down. Exposition is basically how the story begins. You learn things about character, setting, conflict, and background information. The rest of the story then is based from it. So the exposition is like your platform or your foundation. Next, you're looking at your rising action. The rising action is everything that leads to the climax. You learn more about the characters and the conflict, and each event that happens leads to the climax of the story. So the rising action is leading towards the climax. And you can see that in this image here, that they lead on to one another if you follow the arrow. So your exposition at the bottom, rising action, and then lead to your climax. Can you remember what the definition of the climax is? We did this before. Well done. The climax is the most important or most exciting part of a text. Okay. So the next thing they need to be looking at is conflict. And the conflict is the struggle between opposing forces. Okay, so you can have internal conflict and external conflict. Internal conflict is when a character struggles with their own emotions, our own needs and desires, and external conflict is when a character struggles with an outside force. Okay, so maybe a character fighting with another character. There are different types of conflict: man versus self, man versus nature, man versus man, and man versus society. So we discussed there a moment ago, climax. Again, we said that this is the most important or most exciting part of the text. You can use this information here to write down your points and your notes, or else you can write down climax equals the most important or the most interesting, exciting part of a text. Okay? These are just additional notes. Then we're going towards the falling action, and these are the events that lead to the conclusion after the climax, or else they're the things that happen just before we get to the resolution. Usually, these events are the results of the changes in or the decision made by the main character during the climax. So it's what happens after the climax. Everything in the falling action leads to the resolution or the conclusion of the story. Your final part then is your resolution. And this is the part of the plot that reveals the final outcome. Conflicts are solved and all questions are answered. And there is an ending to the story. What you need to do now for task 2 is you need to make notes of those 3 points that we just discussed. Then my advice would be for you to revise the material. You have a quiz on Thursday based on the 7 elements of narrative writing. So all 7 of them. If you need to go back over them, please use the PowerPoint for the last couple of weeks. Make sure that you understand the definition of following 7 elements of narrative writing: theme, setting, character, point of view, characterization, dialogue, and plot.